Hi, good morning. Welcome to Math 228 Statway A. We're about to continue our lesson online this time, okay? But it should work out very nicely. Thank you for joining us. Please open your workbooks right now. We're going to start on page 29, okay? So let's look at page 29 for a minute. Page 29 says, I'm going to read the top of it, okay? The statistical analysis process enables us to use data to make decisions about situations when we only have a limited amount of information. The statistical investigation we conducted in this collaboration involved using data from students in class to assess whether a person's chronotype can be predicted by their birth month. Using data from the class, we made an inference about the relationship between birth month and chronotype for all people. Remember we did that? Remember we wanted to see if we're early birds, if we do well early in the morning, or if we do well late at night. And then we said, depending upon birth months, does it correspond to the expectations? And that was kind of a neat study we did together in class. Look what it says. Last sentence of the first paragraph. Statistical investigations allow us to use data from small samples to make generalizations about much larger populations. Here we'll use statistical analysis process to investigate whether a coin is fair. A student flips a coin 10 times and finds that the coin lands at heads on 8 of the 10 flips. Does this result provide convincing evidence that the coin is not fair? In other words, does this result provide convincing evidence about the probability that the coin lands heads is not equal to probably the coin lands tails? Now, ready? Number 1. If a coin is fair, that means the probability that the coin lands heads is equal to the probability that the coin lands tails. What's the probability that the coin lands heads on a single coin flip? So if it's equal amounts, for number 1, you're going to circle 1/2, right? Because 1/2 of the time, you're going to get heads, 1/2 of the time, your expectation is to get tails. Now let's look at number 2. Number 2 says if a coin is fair and is flipped 20 times, approximately what fraction of the coin flips do you expect will land heads? Now in number 2, there's a misprint. The choices are 0 over 20, 1 over 20, 5 over 20, and 20 over 20. The second choice, see where it says 1 over 20? The publisher left that as 0 after the 1. So you can cross out number 2, instead of 1 over 20, write 10 over 20. And circle that one because 10 over 20 is the same thing as 1/2. And they made that correction on my sheets as well. They wanted us to tell you. Okay, now, if you turn the page, turn to page 30, number 3. It says if a coin is fair and is flipped 20 times, approximately what proportion of the coin flips do you expect will land heads? So they're saying if the fraction is 1/2, 1 out of 2 times, what is the equivalent decimal? So if you're not sure, you do 1 divided by 2 in your calculator, or you figure out what 1/2 is equal to as a decimal, and you know it's 0.5 or 0.50, and that's what you're going to circle for page 30, number 3, 0.50. That's choice 2. Now, what I'd like you to do, please, after this video is over, I want you to, on a separate sheet of paper, flip a coin 20 times. And I want you to do 2 experiments like this. In other words, take a coin, whether it's a quarter or a dime or a penny, flip it 20 times, okay? Number 1 through 20 on your sheet, okay? Separate sheet of paper. First time, flip it. If you get heads, write H. If you get tails, write a T. Second time, same thing. Third time, fourth time, etc. Okay? Now, at the end of the 20 times, I want you to see how many heads you got, okay? Or count how many, right? Heads, tails, count how many heads, how many tails you got, and then we can actually, as a class, compare our notes, okay? But this is what I want you to do it one time, a group of 20 times, then I want you to do it one more time, a group of 20 times, and see how your fractional part, like heads out of the total, from the first group of 20 flips, is compared to heads out of the total for the second group of 20 flips. It's fun, and I want you to evaluate it together. Evaluate those 2 times for yourself, and then we'll bring it together as a class. And we'll discuss all this together when we meet again on Thursday. Okay? That's one thing to do, please. Next. Now please turn to page 31. On page 30, we're going to skip four examples 4 and 5 for now. Okay? So please turn to page 31. We're going to skip number 6 at the top of 31 also. We're going to read the next study together. Okay? Researchers wanted to know if people think a task will be hard to accomplish when the instructions are difficult to read. To answer this question, researchers randomly divided 20 student volunteers into 2 groups of 10 students each. Researchers gave instructions to each group of students using different fonts, as shown below. Instructions for one group were written in a large upright font. The other group was given the same instructions, but in a font that used hard-to-read italics. Researchers asked students to read the directions and say how many minutes they thought the task would take. Researchers did this in order to figure out if the fonts used for the instructions made a difference. And look what you have. The first one is straight on, easy to read. Look what it says. This is the easy to read upright font that was used in this study. And look at underneath it. This is the hard to read italic font that was used in this study. Okay? So the first group of students, those that read the instructions printed in the easy font, had an average time estimate of 8.23 minutes. That was their expectation for how long the task would take. The other group, the group that read the instructions in the hard-to-read italic font, had an average time estimate of 15.1 minutes. So understand the actual wording of the instructions was the same, okay? But the presentation was different. And presentation means one had very easy to read font, they call it, okay? And the second was the harder to read one. And look what it says, okay? So again, the first group of students, those that read the instructions printed in the easy font, said the estimate for the time to complete would be 8.23 minutes. Those that read the harder looking version said the same task would take 15.1 minutes. Interesting, isn't it? Interesting? Look what it says. Researchers concluded that such a large difference between the averages was not likely to have occurred by chance. There was evidence that people think a task will be harder when instructions are difficult to read. So can you underline that last sentence? There was evidence that people think a task will be harder when instructions are difficult to read. Look what it says. Bottom of page 31. The 4 steps of the statistical analysis process are listed below. Number 1, ask a question that can be answered by collecting data. Decide what to measure and then collect the data. Summarize and analyze the data and draw a conclusion and communicate the results. Now, turn to page 32. Based upon this study, they ask you questions on page 32. Number 7 says, which question below is a reasonable research question for this investigation? Here are the choices. Do people like reading in different fonts? That's choice 1. Choice 2, do people prefer reading one font to another font? That's choice 2. Number 3 says, do people think a task will be harder if the instructions for the task are harder to read? That's choice 3. Choice 4 says, do people think that some instructions are easier to follow than other instructions? So that's number 7. Answer whichever of those solutions look best to you. Number 8. What variables are used to answer the research question? Number 1 says type of font and amount of time a person thinks a task will take to complete. That's the first choice. Second choice says type of font and amount of time a task takes to be completed. Number 3 says preferred font and amount of time a person thinks a task will take to complete. And choice 4 says preferred font, and amount of time a task takes to be completed. Number 9, how are the data summarized? That's the information, right? Okay. Number 1, researchers compared the total amount of time that the two groups took to complete the task. Number 2, researchers compared the average amount of time that the two groups took to complete the tasks. Number 3, researchers compared the total amount of the time that the two groups estimated that it would take to complete the tasks. And number 4, researchers compared the average amount of time that the two groups estimated that it would take to complete the tasks. And that's what they have so far. Okay? Next, number 10. What did the researchers conclude? Number 1, these are the choices, okay? Number 1, the 10 students in the sample who read the instructions in the hard-to-read font took longer to complete the task than the 10 students who read the instructions in the easy-to-read font. Number 2, there's evidence that people will take a longer amount of time to complete a task when the instructions are harder to read. Number 3, the 10 students in the sample who read the instructions in the hard-to-read font think the task will be more difficult than the 10 students who read the instructions in the easy-to-read font. And number 4, there's evidence that people think a task will be harder when the instructions are harder to read. Okay? So what I did is, most of you hopefully have the book by now. If you don't, hopefully you could at least surmise the different choices as I read them to you, and circle the best answer that you think is appropriate for the question, okay? When we meet again, which will be on Thursday, I'll discuss with you the solutions or the possible solutions that they give you, and I'll tell you why one answer is perhaps better than the others, okay? So just do the best you can, okay? And before you actually submit assignments, at the end of the week like you do, we'll discuss which is the best answer, okay? Next. Please turn to page 33. 33 talks about another study. It says the United States government recommends that to stay physically fit, middle-aged adults aged 40 to 60 need to burn 150 to 400 calories per day doing exercise. Researchers at Minnesota State University Mankato wanted to learn whether middle-aged adults who use the Wii Fit video game exercised enough to meet the government's fitness recommendations. The Wii Fit is a video game that includes exercises. The researchers taught 20 middle-aged adult volunteers how to use the Wii Fit video game. On the day after they were trained, the adults exercised for 20 minutes with the Wii Fit. Researchers measured the total amount of energy each of the adults in the study used in calories. They found the average energy use was 116 calories for the 20-minute session. Based on the results of the study, the researchers concluded the Wii Fit video game could be a helpful form of exercise for middle-aged adults. But for exercise with Wii Fit to meet the government's recommendation, the researchers stated that the length of the exercise session should be increased from 20 minutes to 30 minutes. So understand this for a moment. Look at the second paragraph. When the adults exercise for 20 minutes, how much, averagely, calorie-wise was burned? Okay, in the study, when the adults exercise for 20 minutes, how many calories did they burn? Can you look for a moment and find it? Now, if you look correctly, the second paragraph, last line, says when they exercised for 20 minutes, they burned 116 calories. However, the government recommends, second line, first paragraph, that adults should burn between 150 to 400 calories to stay physically fit. So understand, when they exercise for 20 minutes and only burn 116 calories, it wasn't enough to fall into the range of the 150 to 400. That's why the researchers said, okay, if the 116 is not enough, for 20 minutes of exercise, perhaps we should extend it to 30 minutes of exercise and then see what happens. And perhaps if they do that, then the calories burned will fall into that group of between 150 and 400. That would be the next guess, right? And their next try. So let's look what it says. Ask a question that can be measured by collecting data. Decide what to measure and then collect the data. Summarize and analyze the data. Draw a conclusion and communicate the results. So on page 33, number 11, which question below is a reasonable research question for this investigation? Number 1, do people think that playing the Wii Fit video game burns calories? 2, does the Wii Fit video game burn enough calories to be considered suitable exercise? Does the Wii Fit video game burn more calories than traditional exercise? That's number 3, choice 3. Choice 4 says, what is the average amount of time that middle-aged adults spend playing Wii Fit video games? Number 12. What data did the researchers collect to answer the research question? Number 1, the amount of time that the adults exercise. Number 2, the name of the adults. Number 3, the type of exercise the adults completed. Number 4, the total amount of calories the adults burned through exercising. So that's 33. 34. Example 13, how are the data summarized? Here are the choices. And I'm reading these choices because if you have the book, it's not a problem. But if you don't have the book, and maybe a few of you still don't, I'm reading you the choices so you can see what choice sounds the most appropriate. And if I'm going a little bit fast, you can always kind of rewind the video a little bit to hear the choices again. Okay, so on page 34, here's number 13. How are the data summarized? Choice 1. Researchers found the proportion of adults who exercise using the Wii Fit video game. Number 2, researchers found the proportion of adults who prefer exercising with the Wii Fit video game over traditional exercises. Number 3, researchers found the average amount of calories that adults consumed through exercise using the Wii Fit video game. Number 4, researchers found the average amount of time that adults spent exercising using the Wii Fit video game. Number 14, what did the researchers conclude? Number 1, the Wii Fit video game is a preferred exercise for some middle-aged adults. Number 2, the Wii Fit video game does not appear to burn enough calories in a 20-minute session, but a 30-minute session would possibly be enough. Number 3, the Wii Fit video game does appear to burn enough calories in a 20-minute session, but a 30-minute session would be even better. Number 4, the sample size is too small to make any reasonable conclusions about all middle-aged adults. Okay, so basically, this will be the synopsis for the lesson. This kind of concludes what we're going to do today. Remember, you're going to do 20 tosses of the coin 2 different times to see how many heads and how many tails you get. And you'll express that as a fraction over the total, which would be over 20. Okay, we'll compare notes on that when we see each other on Thursday. The second thing I want you to do, please, is answer questions about the study with the italics, okay, with the different easy to read fonts and the harder to read font. So that's on page 31 to read it and page 32 to answer the questions, okay? And the last study would be the one we just did on page 33 with the Wii Fitness and the calories burned for the 20-minute period. That's page 33, 11, and 12, and page 34, 13, and 14. So like I said, do the best you can in terms of what you think would be the best possible answer for the questions. We'll go over them when we see each other on Thursday. Don't worry if you're not absolutely perfectly sure of an answer. Make your best guess. And when we see each other on Thursday, we'll be able to, as a class, decide what the best answer will be. Okay? So I hope you're successful in watching the video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed filming it for you. And I hope we learned a lot together today. Okay? There'll be one more video coming. Okay? So you look for that very soon. But please take your time, do the work, and then we'll check it together on Thursday. Okay, take care for now. Bye-bye.